My name is Keith Byam, and I have the awesome pleasure to welcome in our great speaker and workshop facilitator for the evening, Mr. Craig A. Delarge, who's going to be sharing with us really some great tips and amazing insights into how to leverage social media as a professional. So, Mr. Delarge, please take it away.
All righty. Okay, thank you very much, Keith. So welcome, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I hope that most of you got an opportunity to watch the video that was sent out in advance. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about tonight is going to be that with some further annotation. And I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I'm really interested in hearing the sorts of questions that you might have. And even for those of you who are going to be watching this after the event, I want to work with Miguel, Bob, and other members of MVP to be able to entertain additional questions that might come up that I can be answered by WhatsApp text or email. We can figure all that out, the various channels that are available. So let me share my slides here, and we're going to walk through this. So let me offer a little bit of background about myself before I dive in. So again, Craig Delarge. I am a life and career coach at my own consulting firm, which is called Wise Working LLC, where I coach and advise young professionals, practicing professionals, and mid-career professionals. And most of you are in that category I call young professional, which is that you're at a stage in your life and career where you are building a foundation and preparing for the leap into your first professional roles, which then proceed almost like a stair step, which you sometimes stumble back down a little before you climb some more, that will culminate in your career. And even more importantly, the contribution of your gifts to the society and the world in order to get us further along on the journey that we're on as human society, right? And that's a very important point that I like to emphasize when I'm talking with anybody in my practice. I come to you with many years of corporate life in the life sciences industry, many years as an academician, teaching in business schools, largely in Philadelphia, which is my home base, but also have lectured in the UK and Singapore and other parts of the world. I also have a background, have my MBA in design management from University of Westminster, as well as I just a month ago was awarded my Master's of Public Health in Global Mental Health from King's College London. And I'm 56. So that right there, for those of you who think I have to get everything done in my career by the time I'm 25 or 30, not so, not so. Okay, careers are long. So anyway, I came up with the idea for this talk while coaching and listening to many people say, I'm not going to use social media because I think it's junk. It's just people out there who are talking about where they vacation, what they eat for dinner, and where they hang out. And then I hear other people who say, well, I use social media, but that's not for work. It's only for, talking to my friends and family and this sort of thing. And it occurred to me that in my own experience, remember, I'm one of the original users of LinkedIn, going back almost 20 years now. When we don't appreciate how to use social media for purposes of establishing and building our careers and expanding the degree to which we can make an impact on the lives of others and businesses and industries, society, and by extension, the world, we do ourselves a disservice and we do the world a disservice. So this is what we want to talk about. For those of you who have never considered that your use of social media and that social media itself is a key tool in establishing and building your career, I'm here to change your mind tonight. All right. So first, let's start with the definition. I'm going to move pretty quickly here. So we know that social media are all those media that allow networking, conversation, and collaboration over the internet. Many of you, when you're on Instagram or Facebook, might not be considering that that's what you're doing all the time. You're networking, having conversations, and you're collaborating. All right. It's just that you're doing it in the interest of your personal life, much less so in the interest of your professional and career life. I appreciate the beauty of social media is that it has allowed we as human beings in an unprecedented fashion to create community around common interests. So your ability to find other people who have the same interests as you anywhere in the world is significantly greater and better using social media than if you just stay in your neighborhood or with your family or your particular religious congregation or even the university or college that you go to. We know that social media, chiefly through chat, gives us this ability to transcend time and space. So it used to be that I could only talk to people who were in my same time zone. But these days, and for me, the chief tool is WhatsApp. I'm talking to people from China to Dubai to the UK to California. And remember, I live in Philadelphia, all right? A constant global conversation all the time, regardless of time and space. And then social media gives this ability to amplify or to expand our ability to learn from others, right? Because if you have an interest or expertise, you can go on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can find the people who are also interested, who will educate you, who you can learn with. And here's the other thing. I want you to start thinking about this even now. Every one of us are an expert in something already. How much do you leverage social media to actually develop your expertise and share your expertise within a community of common interests? We like to talk about this new emerging group in our societies called influencers, right? These are people that get on social media, and whether they really know what they're talking about or not, the point is they say something. They find a group of people who like what they're saying. And for many people, this has become a way of making a living. Now, I'm not here to suggest that this is what you should be doing to make a living, though, you might. But I am here to suggest that finding our tribe, finding our community that is interested in and working on the same sorts of problems that we're interested in is a vital way of developing and accelerating one career and having a greater degree of satisfaction, purpose, meaning, and progression in what you do. Much more than if you're working in isolation and not actually collecting, contributing to, and learning from those same people. So when we talk about professional now, not personal, professional applications of social media, these are the key ones, okay? Networking, which is fundamentally finding other people who you can add value to, as well as those who can add value to you, knowing who they are, making sure they know who you are, and being able to easily stay in touch in order to add value to one another, okay? The other one, research. So the very meaning of being a professional, think about the root word, to profess. It means that I profess that I have spent an extensive amount of time studying and engaging in and networking within a community of knowledge and expertise. And because knowledge is always updating itself, okay, many people say that whatever you know today is going to be largely useless in 5 years, which is why we have to keep staying in school, at least informally. And so social media is probably one of the best graduate schools that you could cultivate. Most of what I do in my field of professional expertise, I very quickly fall behind in terms of what I know directly, but I've got a network of people who I can get in touch with and who very rapidly can update my knowledge on an ongoing basis, and I play that role for others. I've already talked about this idea of connecting around common interests. So when you're thinking about your career and what it's going to be, one of the most important questions to ask yourself is, what are the problems and the evils in the world that I want to make a contribution to resolving over the course of my life? That is one of the best bases, by the way, for establishing what a career is. I talk to people all the time who say, I don't know what I want to do in my career. And I'll say to them, what is the wrong or the dysfunction or the evil in the world that most kind of gets you worked up? You're like, we need to do something about that. And my thing is, right there is one of the best clues to what your career is going to be or should be. All right. Because what better way is there to end life than to be able to look back and know that you have worked on healing the world in some way that is meaningful to you? And understand there's an industry working on every type of wrong, dysfunction, or evil on the planet. You just need to find that industry, right? Understand what function you want to play in that industry, and then commit yourself to pursuing that. Then consulting, teaching, and learning. That's what I talked about earlier in terms of being in a community where you're constantly teaching and learning, all right? And then establishing your reputation and profile. There's this really good book, and the author escapes me, but I can send the link later, called Being Slightly Famous, right? Where all of us, within our particular areas of interest, problems that we want to be working on, and solutions that we want to be known for, should be working to be slightly famous. And the beauty is that the social media gives us a greater ability to be slightly famous more readily and easily than anything else. It's just unfortunate, I think, and this is where my kids and my grandchildren, yes, I'm a grandfather now, say, you're just talking like an old man. But I often say it's a shame that more citizens in our society are not working to be slightly famous in ways that are more meaningful than just entertainment. And I'll leave that further for another discussion later, okay? So now, you appreciate now what the applications are for your professional development and career within social media. It is now important to understand this 99-1, one call it 1-9-90, the rule of participation inequality, all right? Because this is now about establishing within a given area of interest or expertise on social media, what role are you going to play? Now, this law applies to human participation, not just online, but pretty much everywhere. You go in a classroom, you go to a business meeting, you go to a sports stadium, and here's what you'll observe. Approximately 1%, 1 to 10% of the human beings in that environment step up and lead. They create the content, the agenda, the discussion. Then there's another 9 to 20%, we call them commenters. They're not going to lead a discussion, but they certainly are going to advance a discussion. They don't get started, but they keep it moving forward, shaping, evolving, and developing whatever discourse is happening in that group. And then there's the rest of us, right? That 70 to 90% that just sits and observes. Now, the fact is that all of us play at least two of these roles in any setting or context that we find ourselves, okay? And you see I've got here in the bold, we're either, when we're lurking here in this purple, we're there chiefly to learn. When we're commenting, quite often we're there to establish reputation. We're either establishing reputation through the additional points that we add to the conversation, or establishing reputation through the quality of the questions that we ask. Where I tell people, you don't have to be an expert to become slightly famous. Some people become slightly famous just because they ask good questions that enrich the overall discussion that the creator had started. Now, I want you to start listing down the areas of interest, the problems that you want to have a role in addressing, and the areas, I'm sorry, and what you would say are the areas where you want to build a career, right? That then piggybacks into, okay, if I know these areas of problems, expertise, and career interests, where can I find in social media where the people with that same interest, passion around problem, or career are living? Where are they congregating? Where are they talking to one another? I'm going to use the term, where is your tribe? And we're all good at this. It starts in middle school. You know, we find our tribe. They talk about the jocks, the nerds, and the, right? This continues throughout life. It's just now it might be the accountants, the social activists, the marketing people, the biologists, right? The geneticists, okay? You find your tribe on social media, and then the question becomes, what role are you going to play? And the fact is that you can play any one of these roles at any time. When you feel that you have a voice, play the creator role. You feel a little less insecure about your point of view or voice, play the commenter role, and be really good at asking good questions. And I could offer you some good books about the art of asking questions. It's a very key career skill, is knowing how to ask good questions. But if you know nothing, but you know you want to learn, then play the lurker role. Choosing your role is really important, and playing your role well is really important, because every productive community needs all three. Everyone can't talk at the same time, right? Got to always have listeners for talkers. You got to have questioners for creators, and questioners or commenters also help lurkers to accelerate their learning. As in the classroom, so in social media is what one might say. All right. Okay, so people often ask, well, Craig, you know, what are the social media forums that you use and favor? And here you have it. So for business interests, I tell people just use LinkedIn. And by the way, there's a whole lot that people can do on LinkedIn that they don't. Most of the people I know, they build a LinkedIn profile. They put in their name, an incomplete story about themselves in the header, right? They list their jobs, they list their schools, and they're done. They neglect to put in their projects. They neglect to ask for recommendations. They neglect to put in their volunteer work, right? There's a lot you can do within LinkedIn that gets neglected. Then Slack and WhatsApp. Many people don't know that there are all kinds of business networks and communities that exist in Slack and WhatsApp based on expertise and career interests, where you can meet all kinds of people. You know, one of the beautiful things about social media is that there are people who would never answer your email. Experts I'm talking about, like world-class experts. They would never answer your email. They would never pick up the phone if you called them, but they will interact with you more readily in social media. Why? Because it's a marketplace of ideas, and it's a place where the etiquette is that everyone is approximately or more likely egalitarian on the same level, right? So a middle school student who comes and asks a question about pharmacogenetics, that's the topic that's top of mind for me tonight. There's some scientist advisor who is more likely to answer that question and engage with that middle schooler on Twitter or LinkedIn than they would ever interact with them if they saw them in a room, or you get my point, okay? So for business, I tell people start with LinkedIn and look for Slack and WhatsApp groups that could be helpful to you. And I can do some follow-up coaching to help people who are really interested in this. Now, where your business and your personal interests, like you kind of engage in both at the same time, I say Twitter. And of course, these days, many people are moving over to Mastodon. I probably should have listed Mastodon there, the Twitter alternative. And then, if you're one of these people who say, my business and my personal are all together. I don't have like this business persona and then this personal persona. The two are both the same. Then I think Facebook and Instagram work out real well. I also say that if your career interests tend towards consumer versus business to business in terms of industry or business model, consumer industries, you can learn a lot and engage with a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram because those are consumer environments, less so business environments, unless you're building a business on those platforms. But I tell people, don't get overwhelmed by all the choices. Start and get really good with LinkedIn. If there's one you're going to focus on when we're talking about your professional career, go all the way overboard with LinkedIn. All right. And again, I'm happy to take questions from people on how to approach that. So now, a next thing to contemplate after you make some decisions. So you made decisions about where will you hang out? Who's your tribe? How will you engage with that tribe, right? Creator, commenter, lurker. Which platform will you spend most of your time on with that tribe? And I tell people at minimum, start out 15 to 30 minutes a week. For those of us who say, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this, right? Just because consistency is more important than volume, right? Think about when we were kids in the neighborhood. There was the kid that came around during the summer. You saw them for a few weeks and they went away because they were only there to visit their grandma for the summer. You didn't think any more about them. It was the kid that was on the corner or on the basketball court or the playground every week, all year for multiple years. That's where trust built. That's where reputation built. That's where relationship and the willingness to help and be helped develop. I tell people, don't be the kid who came around for summer vacation. Be the kid that's in the neighborhood, right? Who gets to be known and where people get used to you. And that builds the affinity that then benefits you. Now, nobody wants a person who shows up with nothing to contribute. The good news is that because we're human, we all have something to contribute. So I tell people after selecting your platform, think about what are you going to contribute? This is what we call being a go-giver. You've heard the term be a go-getter. There's this really good book. Sorry, again, the author escapes me. Being a go-giver. That means always show up ready to contribute something before you ask for something. This is important. And if you're one of these people who say, well, I don't have anything to contribute, get out of your head and talk to more of the people who you are already contributing to in your life. All right. So what can you contribute? You have an opinion about your area of expertise. You have insights that come out of your own personal experience. And by the way, remember what I said about asking questions. Sometimes asking questions about your opinion, your expertise, and your insights to validate the correctness or what the tribe thinks of what you think is as much a contribution in social media. It's not always about telling people what you know. You can make a lot of reputation on being that person who's always asking the sharp, insightful question. I want to keep emphasizing that. Next, all professionals, to be professionals, are reading and doing research. So one of the things that I love to do, and I see lots of my peers do in social media, whatever I'm reading, in order to stay on top of my area of expertise, I post it. Because in social media, you are what you post. There are people who think I'm an expert in some areas because I post stuff about it. And what I tell them, I'm not an expert. I just read a lot about it, trying to become an expert. And then I share what I'm reading. Why? Because that's a contribution to the tribe at large. And sometimes posting stuff that you don't know much about and just putting a comment. I just read this. This is what I think about it. Hey, the rest of you, tell me what you think about this. And getting a conversation going can be a critical part of playing the role of creator within a community where a rising tide of learning raises all ships, okay? The other one, professional opportunities. So the fastest way to get a job in any profession is through referral. Being that person who knows about professional opportunities and you're always generously sharing those opportunities with other people in the tribe, this is gold. This is currency, all right? Because you need to be sharing. Why? Because you want people to share with you. There's a law of reciprocity because we're all taken care of to the degree that we take care of one another. So being someone who is continually sharing professional opportunities is an important role that you can play in social media. Then your network connections. So being that person who is open, where appropriate, to connecting people who have similar problems and relevant solutions can be a very important role. And if you're one of those people, you're the extrovert, social butterfly, this is an especially good role for you to play, all right? You know, in the over 15 years that I've been using LinkedIn, I've accumulated a bit over 10,000 connections. And one of the things I love to do for people in my network is I tell them, you don't have to have 10,000 connections because I do. If you need an expertise, a referral, or doing some research, and I have a connection that can benefit you, you don't need to know all those people because you're connected to me and I know all those people, right? And if you can help them and they can help you, part of my professional role is to use my resource to connect people to help one another, because I know that's what people are doing for me all the time. And by the way, you're never too young to start doing this. And then get this last one. So, you know, careers are hard, disappointing often, and demoralizing. All of us hit walls where we want to give up, where we want to drop out, and where we don't think we're going to make it, right? Just being that person in social media who is an encouraging presence, right? You hear somebody, they talk about they got fired, they got demoted, their project failed, and being the one that says, hey, I empathize, but no, you can make it. I'm here for you if there's anything you need. I've been through a similar situation and I'm available to you. We really underestimate the degree that playing that sort of role within tribes and communities and social media can be a huge help, a huge help. And so that's why I put that there, is I tell people that just being that person who's watching out for the health of the community and encouraging and helping people out who are down and having a difficult time. And I think this is especially important in this current day, where every day we're reading about professional burnout, we're reading about depression and anxiety, and in some professions, unfortunately, increasing levels of suicide, right? And so when we know that this is a challenge in professional circles, and this is from high school up to mid-career, there's no stage in people's careers now where they are not subject and vulnerable to these challenges. we can be committed to playing this kind of role as the member of communities. So these are the things that we can contribute. And so now what I want you to think about is, what are you most readily willing out of your own giftedness and strengths and experience to contribute to the professional communities that you're going to become a part of? All right. Bear with me a second here. All righty. I was just taking a quick look at the chat. Okay, we're fine. Oh no, there is a question here that I should address. Okay, let me pause here to answer this. So someone asked the question. This is the first time I've heard someone mention including some form of asking for recommendations. How would that work? Okay, so here's how that works. I'm gonna take the question because it's right here and fresh. So, and by the way, obviously feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn and take a look at how my LinkedIn profile is set up to give you some insights into that you can mimic. Okay, so here's the thing. In LinkedIn, there is a section in the user interface where you can write recommendations for other people, or you can ask for recommendations. I tell people that whenever you are leaving a job, finishing up a big project, or moving to a new role, where people have a fresh impression of what your performance has been and the impact that you've made, that is the best time to take the list of people that you've been working with and send them a request for a recommendation. Now, here's what I want you to know. There's about a 10% response rate. So if you want one recommendation written, you're going to have to ask 10 people. That's just the nature, that's the law of averages, if you will, right? I find so many people who say, well, that might be a bother to the person. They might think that I'm bragging and being proud. Does it really matter? Do people really read those recommendations? Don't people think those recommendations are biased in the positive? I have found over 15 years that by and large, that's not true. And where it is true, it doesn't matter. People who think I'm bragging, they don't write me a recommendation. They're somewhere in that 9 out of 10 that don't write. People who believe that the recommendations are biased and not authentic, they don't read them. I'm not getting the recommendations for the people who don't believe in them. I'm getting the recommendations written for the people who they regard recommendations. They don't believe that people would take time out of their busy schedule to lie. Right? They believe that if a person is going to take time out of their busy schedule to write a paragraph or two about how Craig has impacted their life or career, there must be something to that. So I say, time it around closing out 10 years projects. I'll leave it at that, okay? Don't be demoralized if 9 out of 10 don't answer, but be grateful for the 1 out of 10. And then I say reciprocate, which is write recommendations for other people. Okay? Now, the other thing I will tell you, on my worst days where I feel most demoralized, I failed at something, my imposter is really working on me, right? One of the best things I do is I go read my recommendations, which go back about 20 years now, right? So there are people who wrote that I worked with back in 1988 when I first came out of college, when I worked at IMS, what's now IQVIA. They wrote recommendations for me. Going back through, for me, 20 years of people talking to me about the positive impact that I've had in their lives is always encouraging to me. Why? Because being human, I forget about the impact that I've had on people's lives. I'm only remembering the judgment, the ridicule, and the condemnation related to my most immediate failure. so even I'm encouraged by the recommendations that others have written about me. And I tell people, if only because you're going to need to pick me up at some point in the future, you should ask for recommendations. And for sure, when I applied to graduate programs, as I did 4 years ago, when I'm going for consulting projects, which I do largely now, throughout my corporate career, when I submit resumes because I am going for job roles, I put the link of my LinkedIn profile, and very often in my cover letter or in my thank you note, I will say to people, if you want to learn more about what people think about me and my performance, come to my LinkedIn profile and read the recommendations. Now, I've had people say, no, Craig, you don't do that. And I'm like, yes. And Bob will tell you, I've had an exceptional career, and I would like to think that is partially as a function of people looking at the recommendations that have been in my LinkedIn profile. So I hope that's a helpful response, and I'll leave that right there for now. Okay, bear with me. I got another question here. So with 80% of recruiters seeing LinkedIn as the most effective platform for vetting, are there key elements of the profile? Oh, yes, absolutely. So in your profile, the algorithm makes most use. Now, they update this algorithm about every 3 to 5 years. So it's good to actually read the blog posts where they talk about the latest criteria that the LinkedIn algorithms looked at. But I'll tell you that the last time that I got advice on this, which has been within the last 5 years, what an expert told me is that your headline, that profile section where you write your story, and the skill sets that you list play the greatest role in what LinkedIn does with your profile. It impacts the jobs that show up in your alert. It impacts the people that your profile gets shared with. It impacts the profiles that get shared with you. Because remember, the reason to have a maxed out LinkedIn profile is that the more information you give them, not personal, professional, the more professional information you give them, the more the algorithm is going to be able to match you up with people who would value you, who would educate you, and who would hire you. And we all know that hiring is the name of the game. And if your thing is, I don't want to be hired, getting clients. If your thing is, I'm not going to get a job, I'm going to be a consultant, you got to have clients. All right. So that's the answer to that. I hope that's helpful. Okay. Now, do I see another question? Bear with me here. Oh, the title of that book. No, it's something like The Art of Questions. I even know the lady who wrote this book. It's grounded in this methodology called appreciative inquiry. And as a follow-up to this session, I am going to go find that so we can include it as a link for those that are listening to this. Bob, you unmuted. Is that because you remember the name of this book?
No, I found 2 books. One was it's called The Art of the Question.
Yeah.
And then there's The Art of Asking by Terry Faden.
Okay. All right.
The Art, Mary Lee, is that it?
Yeah, Mary Lee Adams, right?
No, Goldberg.
Mary Lee Goldberg.
I'll keep looking.
Okay, but here's the thing. I went to one of her webinars years ago, and it's been one of the most impactful skill sets that I have learned that have contributed to the success of my career.
That's great.
The ability to ask good questions say a lot about you. It says a lot about the level of research that you've done. It says a lot about your thinking, right? And so I've learned throughout my career that particularly when I'm interviewing someone and when I am trying to make a decision about whether I want to hire them or work with them, just sitting back at some point in the conversation and listening to the questions they ask, or for that matter, whether they ask questions at all, tells me a whole lot about where they are in their head, how assertive they are, how much research they've done, how creative they are in their thinking. It's not even about a right or wrong, right? It's just about listening deeply to what people ask. But then here's the thing. I know that in my own consulting, much of the value that I add to my clients, Bob will tell you this because I used to work for Bob. A lot of the value I add is around the questions I ask. Because what questions do is they elicit thought. They get people to look at the world in ways that they hadn't thought about looking at it. You don't have to have the answer. It's about the question. Then we can collaborate to get to an answer. So I encourage all of you as a part of your professional development to read the literature, read books that in this area of appreciative inquiry, and that really sharpen your skill set around asking questions. And then the next big skill set after that is listening. And then, interestingly enough, the third one is then talking. The one we do the most of is the least important. The more important is asking questions and listening, right? Okay. And then you remember what all of our grandmothers told us as kids. The reason you have 2 ears and 1 mouth is because that's proportion in which you should be communicating. Okay. All right. So now let me leave you with a process. All right. Okay. So, because people always say, Craig, you gave me this information, but where do I start? Right? How do I act on this? So here you go. First, set one objective. Don't get overwhelmed with 5 objectives. Set one objective for how you're going to apply this, right? Case in point might be, I'm interested in studying bioengineering in undergrad. So I want to understand what are the top schools, the top researchers, and the latest trends in the field, right? That's an objective. Now, what you're going to do is you got books and teachers and all that, and maybe family members and friends, but you're going to up the ante and actually learn how to use social media to enhance, right? And to accelerate your learning, your network, your relationships, and your understanding of the best places to study. You want to use social media to enhance that. Yeah, I know this is going to cut into like all that other Instagram, and I won't even say Facebook. You probably don't use Facebook. That's for old people like me. Let's just stick with Instagram. I don't know what the other ones are. It's going to cut into that other stuff. But remember, unless you're going to be an influencer, that other stuff isn't helping you as much towards your professional future. And given that most of your life is spent at work, sorry to break that news to you. I know your parents were probably saying that to you already. I just want to back them up. You really do want to work on having options in terms of what you get to do for a career. But I digress. Next, open your accounts. If you're someone who's nervous about social media, be discreet. Most social media platforms, you can join and be invisible. It's all about the settings, okay? Then, like going to, I shouldn't have put cocktail party here. I'm sorry, Keith and Miguel. I should have said summer barbecue. This is the version I present to adults. The kids should ignore this, okay? But here's my point. Whenever you go to a gathering, a summer barbecue, you see a group of people talking, social media tribe, you don't just rush in and start talking, right? You kind of ease up and you listen. What are they talking about? What is the language they're using, right? And then after listening for a while without much to say, when you've sized up the situation, then you start to contribute. And when I say to people, don't rush in too fast, right? Act like you're at a summer barbecue. Take time to listen at the beginning before you just jump in with a whole lot to say, all right? Unless, of course, you've been invited to be the speaker at the barbecue, then you can start talking right away, but that's not always the case. So then determine your contribution. How are you going to be a go-giver? And I need to give you guys the link to that book. That's a good read, okay? What are you going to give? What are you going to contribute? And only when you have stepped in to start making a contribution do you begin to ask for anything. But here's the thing, know what you're going to ask for. Don't ask first, but do know what you are going to ask for, all right? And then be consistent. Remember what I said earlier, in social media, consistently showing up within the tribe that you're adopting in order to give and then to gain based on your professional interests, the problems you want to be a part of solving, and the field of practice that you want to develop in is really important. So, I talked about the idea that, man, I've been 30 years in life sciences, 25 in academia, 17 in mental health. I've been on LinkedIn for about 18 years, and I have had a pretty consistent community, various communities that I have been consistently a part of, who have, frankly, helped me to build my career, right? When I've done well, they've congratulated me. When I've become overly proud and unhumble and too full of myself, they've, knocked me down, but then helped me back up to brush myself off. When I've gotten exhausted and tired, they pushed me first to rest and then to get up and keep going. Okay? We all need this. And social media, when we use it skillfully as professionals, it's a significant advantage that we need to take advantage of and that we need to be teaching each other to take advantage of. So, tip for the road. Be strategic and loyal to your goals in social media. Strategic, by the way, for those of you who say, I keep hearing that term, but I don't know what it means. The synonym for strategic is advantage. Strategy is about gaining an advantage in a competitive situation. So now for the rest of your lives, whenever you hear the word strategic, I want you to remember, it's about how do I get an advantage, okay? If there's no competition, you don't need strategy. Be a go-giver in your area of expertise. And by the way, there will be multiple. None of us have only one area of expertise. Play your role well. Creator, commenter, or observer, or combinations of the two. And then be consistent. All right? And there you have it. Social media for professionals. Once again, it is easily one of the most important tools that we have been blessed with in this age in order to help us to learn, grow, and have the impact on the society and the world that we want to have. And so that's why I like to give this talk, because going into careers without this understanding puts too many of us at too great a disadvantage that we need not suffer, because we're already using the medium. This is about using it to advance your career.